Have you ever wondered what happens when parents choose one child over another for 29 years? When Diane discovered her parents expected her to pay her sister's $350,000 mortgage, she thought the worst was behind her. But when they took her to court, she realized the real battle was just beginning. What happened next changed everything. If you love stories about family drama and sweet revenge, smash that like button and drop a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible revenge stories like this one. Meet Diane, a 29-year-old accountant who spent her whole life watching her parents give everything to her younger sister Ashley. While Ashley got new cars and college funds, Diane worked 3 jobs to pay her own way through school. For nearly 3 decades, Diane stayed quiet about the unfair treatment, believing family loyalty meant accepting whatever scraps of love came her way. The phone rang at 7 in the morning on a Tuesday. Diane groaned and rolled over in her small apartment, checking the caller ID. "Mom." She almost didn't answer, but guilt made her pick up on the 4th ring. "Diane, we need to talk." Her mother's voice was sharp and businesslike. "Come over for dinner tonight. Your father and I have something important to discuss with you." Diane sat up in bed, instantly alert. Her parents only used that tone when they wanted something. "What's this about, Mom?" "Just be here at 6. Don't be late." The line went dead. Diane stared at her phone, anxiety building in her chest. She had learned to dread these family meetings over the years. They usually ended with her parents asking for money or expecting her to solve whatever problem Ashley had created. At work, Diane couldn't focus on the spreadsheets in front of her. She kept checking the clock, wondering what crisis awaited her at home. Her co-worker Janet noticed her distraction. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," Janet said, sitting on the edge of Diane's desk. "Everything okay?" "Family dinner tonight," Diane replied, not looking up from her computer. "My parents want to discuss something important." Janet raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound good. Your family's idea of important usually involves your wallet, right?" Diane had shared enough stories over the years that Janet knew about the family dynamics. How Ashley had received a brand new Honda for her 16th birthday, while Diane saved for months to buy a rusty pickup truck. How their parents paid Ashley's entire college tuition while Diane worked nights at a diner to afford community college. "I'm probably overthinking it," Diane said, though she didn't believe her own words. The drive to her childhood home in Maplewood Heights took 20 minutes through Tuesday evening traffic. The house looked the same as always, a modest 2-story with white siding and blue shutters. Ashley's red convertible sat in the driveway next to their father's truck. Diane parked on the street and took a deep breath. Her mother answered the door before Diane could knock. "There you are. We're waiting in the living room." The family was gathered around the coffee table like some kind of intervention. Her father sat in his recliner, arms crossed. Ashley lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone with perfectly manicured nails. Her mother gestured for Diane to sit in the remaining chair. "Now that we're all here," her father began, "we need to discuss Ashley's situation." Diane's stomach dropped. "What situation?" Ashley finally looked up from her phone, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and defiance. "I'm behind on my mortgage payments. Like really behind." The words hit Diane like a physical blow. Ashley had bought a house 2 years ago, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in the nicest part of town. Diane remembered the housewarming party, how Ashley had bragged about getting approved for such a large loan. "How behind?" Diane asked quietly. "For months," Ashley mumbled. "The bank is starting foreclosure proceedings." Their mother leaned forward. "That's why we called you here, Diane. We need you to help your sister." "Help how?" Though Diane already knew where this was heading. "We want you to take over the mortgage payments," her father said matter-of-factly, "just until Ashley gets back on her feet." Diane felt the familiar sensation of being trapped. This was how it always went. Ashley would mess up, and somehow it became Diane's responsibility to fix it. Dad, her mortgage payment is probably more than my entire monthly salary. Don't be dramatic, her mother snapped. You make good money as an accountant. You live in that tiny apartment and never spend money on anything fun. You can afford it. I live in a tiny apartment because I'm saving money, Diane replied, her voice rising slightly. I can't afford a $2,800 mortgage payment every month. Ashley's eyes widened. It's only $2,400. Only. Diane stood up, pacing to the window. Ashley, that's more than most people's entire paychecks. How did you even qualify for that loan? Mom and Dad co-signed, Ashley said defensively, and I had a good job when I bought it. What happened to that job? Ashley looked away. I got laid off, but I'm looking for something new. I just need a little help until I find the right opportunity. Diane turned back to her family. 3 sets of eyes stared at her expectantly, as if her agreement was a foregone conclusion. The weight of 29 years of being the responsible one, the fixer, the one who sacrificed for everyone else pressed down on her shoulders. I can't do it, she said quietly. I won't do it. The room fell silent. Her father's face darkened. What did you just say? I said, I can't take over Ashley's mortgage. I don't have that kind of money. You have savings, her mother pointed out. You could use those. My savings are for my future, for maybe buying my own house someday, or for emergencies. This is an emergency, Ashley said, tears forming in her eyes. I could lose my house, Diane. My beautiful house. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you stopped making payments, Diane replied, surprised by her own boldness. Her father stood up, his face red with anger. That's enough. Ashley is your sister. Family helps family. Family helps family? Diane's voice cracked. Where was the family help when I was working 3 jobs to pay for college? Where was it when I ate ramen noodles for dinner every night because I couldn't afford groceries? That's different, her mother said dismissively. You were always independent. You never asked for help. I shouldn't have had to ask. The argument continued for another hour. Her parents pulled out every manipulation tactic they'd used over the years. Guilt about family loyalty, shame about being selfish, threats about being cut off from the family. Ashley cried and pleaded, painting herself as the victim of circumstances beyond her control. But something had shifted in Diane that night. Maybe it was seeing her sister's house, a house 3 times the size of Diane's apartment. Maybe it was watching Ashley cry crocodile tears while wearing a designer dress that cost more than Diane's monthly grocery budget. Or maybe it was just 29 years of resentment finally boiling over. I'm not doing it, Diane said firmly as she grabbed her purse. Find another solution. She was halfway to the door when her father's voice stopped her cold. If you walk out that door, you're no longer our daughter. Diane's hand froze on the doorknob. She turned around slowly, studying her father's face. He wasn't bluffing. Neither was her mother, who stood beside him with the same cold expression. Fine, Diane said, her voice steady despite the earthquake happening in her chest. Then I guess I'm no longer your daughter. She walked out into the cool evening air, her hands shaking as she fumbled for her car keys. Behind her, she could hear Ashley sobbing and her mother's voice rising in anger, but she didn't look back. What Diane didn't know was that her parents had already made their next move. The certified letter would arrive at her apartment in 3 days, and everything she thought she knew about her family was about to change forever. The certified letter arrived on Friday afternoon while Diane was at work. She found the yellow slip in her mailbox and had to drive to the post office to pick up. The return address made her stomach clench. Henderson and Associates, attorneys at law. Diane sat in her car in the post office parking lot, staring at the thick envelope. Her hands trembled as she tore it open. The legal letterhead swam before her eyes as she read the first paragraph. Notice of legal action. You are hereby notified that Robert and Linda Morrison, along with Ashley Morrison, are filing suit against you for breach of family obligation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The papers slipped from her hands onto the passenger seat. She couldn't breathe. Her own parents were suing her, actually suing her, for refusing to pay Ashley's mortgage. The lawsuit demanded $350,000 in damages. The amount hit her like a punch to the gut. Even if she sold everything she owned, she couldn't come close to that number. Her savings account had $47,000 she'd scraped together over 5 years. Her car was worth maybe $8,000 on a good day. Diane drove home in a daze, the legal papers burning like fire on the seat beside her. She called in sick to work, something she'd never done unless she was actually dying. Then she sat on her couch and read the entire lawsuit 3 times. The document painted her as a cruel, heartless daughter who had abandoned her family in their time of need. It claimed she had psychologically damaged Ashley by refusing to help, causing her sister to fall into a deep depression. It stated that Diane's actions had caused her parents severe emotional distress and damaged their health. But the most shocking part was the financial claim. The lawsuit alleged that Diane owed her parents money for her upbringing, every dollar they'd spent on food, clothing, and shelter for 18 years. It calculated the total cost of raising her, added interest, and demanded immediate payment. Diane's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is what happens when you abandon family. Pay up or face the consequences. Dad. She blocked the number and called her friend Janet. They're suing me, Diane said when Janet picked up. My parents are actually suing me. What? That's insane. For what? $350,000. They want me to pay them back for raising me, plus damages for not helping Ashley. Janet was quiet for a long moment. Diane, you need a lawyer. Like yesterday. I can't afford a lawyer good enough to fight this. Do you know how much lawyers cost? More than you can afford to lose if you don't fight it. Diane spent the weekend researching family law attorneys online. Most wanted $300 to $500 just for a consultation. She finally found a legal aid clinic that offered free consultations on Tuesdays. The attorney was a tired-looking woman named Patricia Webb who worked out of a cramped office above a sandwich shop. She listened to Diane's story while flipping through the lawsuit papers. This is unusual, Patricia said finally. I've never seen a case quite like this. The good news is that most of their claims are legally frivolous. Parents can't sue their adult children for the cost of raising them. That's ridiculous. But they're still suing me, Diane pointed out. Yes, and that's the problem. Even frivolous lawsuits can be expensive to fight. Your parents' attorney knows this. They're banking on you settling out of court rather than fighting it. Patricia explained that defending against the lawsuit would cost at least $15,000, probably more. Even if Diane won, she might not recover her legal fees. It was a calculated move designed to force her into submission. What if I just ignore it? Diane asked. Then they get a default judgment and can garnish your wages, freeze your bank accounts, and put liens on any property you own. You can't ignore this. Diane left the legal clinic feeling worse than when she'd arrived. She had 7 days to respond to the lawsuit, 7 days to figure out how to fight her own family in court. That evening, she sat in her apartment eating microwaved soup and trying to process what was happening. Her parents had always been manipulative, but this was beyond anything she'd imagined. They were willing to destroy her financially rather than accept her decision. Her phone rang. Ashley's name appeared on the screen. Please don't hang up, Ashley said quickly when Diane answered. I need to talk to you. There's nothing to talk about. You're suing me. I didn't want to do this, Diane. Mom and Dad made me sign the papers. They said it was the only way to save my house. So you chose the house over your sister. Ashley started crying. It's not that simple. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The bank called again today. They're scheduling the foreclosure sale for next month. That's not my problem, Ashley. But it could be your solution too. If you just help me keep the house, we can drop the lawsuit. Everything goes back to normal. Diane almost laughed. Normal? You mean back to me being the family ATM while you live like a princess? That's not fair. I never asked to be treated differently. You never asked them to stop either. The conversation went in circles for 20 minutes. Ashley begged, pleaded, and made promises she had no intention of keeping. Diane had heard it all before. Finally, she hung up and turned off her phone. The next morning, Diane made a decision that would change everything. She called Patricia Webb and asked her to file a countersuit. If her parents wanted to play legal games, she would play too. Are you sure about this? Patricia asked. Countersuing your family will make this much more complicated. I'm sure. I want to sue them for 29 years of emotional abuse and financial discrimination. Patricia was quiet for a moment. That's actually not a bad idea. If we can prove a pattern of favoritism and emotional manipulation, it could strengthen your defense and maybe even get you some damages. How much would something like that be worth? Hard to say, but if we can document the financial disparity between how they treated you and Ashley, it could be substantial. Diane spent the rest of the week gathering evidence. She found old photos of Ashley's Sweet 16 party, the one with the 200-person guest list and live band. She dug up her own 16th birthday memory, dinner at a chain restaurant, and a $50 gift card. She made lists of everything she could remember. The car situation, college tuition, Christmas presents, family vacations that Ashley went on while Diane worked summer jobs. The pattern was clear and undeniable. But as she prepared for legal war against her family, Diane had no idea that her parents were already planning their next move. Ashley's foreclosure hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday, and they had no intention of letting their golden child lose her house. That's when her parents made the phone call that would turn this legal battle into something much more dangerous. The phone call came at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday night. Diane jerked awake, her heart pounding as she fumbled for her phone in the dark. Unknown number. Hello. Heavy breathing, then a man's voice she didn't recognize. Stop the lawsuit or you'll regret it. Who is this? A friend of your family. Drop the countersuit by tomorrow or things get ugly. The line went dead. Diane sat up in bed, wide awake now. She checked her doors and windows, then called the police. The officer who took her report seemed bored. Probably just a prank call, he said, barely looking up from his notepad. Family disputes bring out the crazies sometimes. But Diane knew better. Her parents had crossed a line she never thought they'd cross. The next morning, she arrived at work to find her boss waiting by her desk. Mr. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. Diane, we need to talk. Someone called yesterday claiming you've been stealing from the company. What? Diane's coffee mug slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor. That's impossible. I would never. I know that, but they sounded very convincing. Said they had proof you'd been skimming money from client accounts. Diane's legs felt weak. Who called? They wouldn't give their name, but they knew details about your work, your access to the accounts. It was disturbing enough that I have to investigate. Mr. Rodriguez, I've worked here for 4 years. You know I'm honest. I do know that, but my hands are tied. I have to put you on paid leave while we audit your accounts. Diane gathered her things in a haze. Her coworkers stared as she walked past their desks carrying a cardboard box. Janet followed her to the parking lot. This is insane, Janet said. Everyone knows you're the most honest person here. It's my parents, Diane said quietly. They're trying to destroy my life. Can they do that? They're doing it. That afternoon, Diane met with Patricia Webb to discuss the threatening phone call and her work situation. This is escalating quickly, Patricia said, looking worried. Your parents are playing hardball. Can we prove they're behind it? Not without evidence. But the timing is suspicious. Your countersuit was filed yesterday, and suddenly you're getting threatened and suspended from work. Patricia recommended filing for a restraining order, but they needed more proof of harassment. One anonymous phone call wouldn't be enough. They got their proof the next day. Diane was grocery shopping when she noticed someone following her. A thin man in a baseball cap stayed exactly 3 aisles behind her, pretending to shop but never putting anything in his cart. When she moved to the checkout line, he disappeared. In the parking lot, she found all 4 of her tires slashed. The police took it more seriously this time. Officer Martinez was thorough, taking photos and asking detailed questions about the family lawsuit. This looks like intimidation, he said. Someone's trying to scare you into backing down. My parents wouldn't do this themselves, Diane said, but they might know people who would. Her father had worked construction for 30 years. He knew guys who knew guys, the kind of people who might slash tires for a couple $100. While waiting for the tow truck, Diane called Patricia. This proves harassment, Patricia said. We can definitely get a restraining order now. What about my job? I'm working on that. I've contacted your company's legal department. If your parents or their associates made false accusations, that's defamation. We can add it to the countersuit. The tow truck arrived, and Diane spent $800 she couldn't afford on new tires. Money that should have gone to her legal defense was now going to car repairs. That evening, she sat in her apartment wondering how her life had spiraled so far out of control. A week ago, she'd been a normal person with a normal job and a normal life. Now she was unemployed, being stalked, and fighting a legal battle that could bankrupt her. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. This could all stop if you just do the right thing. Help your sister. Diane typed back, leave me alone. We're family. Family doesn't abandon family. You abandoned me the day you decided Ashley was worth more than me. Dramatic as always. Ashley's foreclosure hearing is Monday. Last chance to save her house. Diane turned off her phone and tried to watch TV, but she couldn't focus. Every sound outside made her jump. Every car that drove past slowly made her check the windows. The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety and legal research. Diane spent hours online, reading about family lawsuits and harassment cases. She learned that her situation wasn't unique. Families destroyed each other in court every day over money and perceived slights. But knowing she wasn't alone didn't make it easier. Monday morning brought news that changed everything. Patricia called with an update from the courthouse. Ashley's foreclosure was postponed, Patricia said. Someone made a large payment to the bank, enough to bring her current on the mortgage. How much? $12,000. Your parents somehow came up with the money. Diane felt a chill run down her spine. Where would they get that kind of money? I don't know, but there's more. The bank records show the payment came from a cashier's check. No way to trace where the money originated. They're still suing me even though Ashley's house is safe? It appears so. The lawsuit is still active. In fact, their attorney filed additional claims this morning. Diane's stomach dropped. What kind of additional claims? They're now claiming you've been secretly recording family conversations and threatening to release them publicly. They want damages for invasion of privacy and emotional distress. That's completely false. I've never recorded anything. I know, but they're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. After hanging up, Diane sat in her kitchen, staring at the wall. Her parents had found money to save Ashley's house. $12,000 they'd claimed not to have. But instead of dropping the lawsuit, they'd escalated it. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about power and control. Her parents couldn't stand that she'd finally said no to them. They were willing to destroy her completely rather than admit they'd been wrong. That's when Diane realized the truth that would change everything. Her parents weren't trying to get money from her. They were trying to break her down until she begged for forgiveness and went back to being their obedient daughter. But as she sat there planning her next move, Diane had no idea that her parents had already made their biggest mistake. The source of that $12,000 would soon be revealed, and when it would expose secrets that would shock everyone, including Ashley. The evidence was sitting in a manila envelope on Patricia's desk, waiting to be opened. And when the real story of the Morrison family would finally come to light. The envelope arrived at Patricia's office on Thursday morning, delivered by a nervous-looking young man who refused to give his name. Inside was a stack of bank records, canceled checks, and a handwritten note that simply said, "The truth about the Morrison family money." Patricia called Diane immediately. "You need to get down here right now. Someone just handed us the smoking gun." Diane arrived at the office within an hour, her heart racing. Patricia spread the documents across her desk like pieces of a puzzle. "This is incredible," Patricia said, pointing to a bank statement. "Look at these deposits into your parents' account over the past 2 years." Diane leaned forward, studying the numbers. Regular deposits of $800, $1,200, sometimes $1,500, all from something called Morrison Family Trust. "I've never heard of a family trust," Diane said. "That's because it's not your family's trust. Look at this." Patricia pulled out a legal document. "This is a copy of your grandmother's will. Your father's mother. She died 3 years ago, right?" "Yes. Grandma Rose. She had dementia toward the end. According to this will, she left her entire estate, worth about $180,000, to be divided equally between her 2 granddaughters, you and Ashley." Diane's blood turned to ice. "What? You were supposed to inherit $90,000 3 years ago. But look at these bank records. Your parents have been collecting your inheritance and giving it all to Ashley." The room spun around Diane. She gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling. "They stole my inheritance." "It gets worse. Remember that $12,000 that saved Ashley's house? It came from your inheritance money. Your parents used your own money to keep Ashley from losing her house, then sued you for not helping her." Patricia pulled out more documents. "Here's a copy of Ashley's mortgage application. Your parents didn't just co-sign. They used your inheritance as collateral. Ashley's house is literally built on money that was supposed to be yours." Diane couldn't speak. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that she couldn't process it. Her parents hadn't just stolen her inheritance. They'd used it to prop up Ashley's lifestyle while suing Diane for being selfish. How did someone get these documents? Diane finally asked. The note mentioned they worked at the bank. Probably saw the Morrison name on multiple accounts and got suspicious. Bank employees aren't supposed to share information, but sometimes they make exceptions when they see fraud. Is it fraud? Absolutely. Your parents were supposed to be trustees of your grandmother's estate. Instead, they embezzled your inheritance and forged documents to make it look like Ashley was the sole beneficiary. Diane stood up and paced to the window. Outside, normal people were living normal lives, going to work, buying groceries, dealing with regular problems. She envied them. "What do we do with this?" she asked. "We destroy them," Patricia said grimly. "This is criminal fraud. We can have them arrested. We can also amend your countersuit to include theft, embezzlement, and fraud. With interest and damages, you're looking at potentially $300,000. More than they're suing me for. Much more. And here's the beautiful part. Ashley knew about the inheritance. Look at this email." Patricia handed her a printout. It was from Ashley to their mother, dated 6 months ago. "Thanks for the extra money from Grandma's account. I really needed it for the house payment. Has Diane asked about her share yet?" Their mother's response was chilling. "Diane doesn't need to know. She's always been independent. Ashley needs the help more. Diane crumpled the email in her fist. They all knew. The whole time, they all knew they were stealing from me. There's more. Your parents have been taking money from your grandmother's estate for 2 years. Small amounts, but it adds up. They've been funding Ashley's lifestyle with your inheritance while you worked overtime and lived in that tiny apartment. The full scope of the betrayal hit Diane like a physical blow. Every time she'd eaten ramen noodles for dinner to save money, Ashley had been spending Diane's inheritance on restaurant meals. Every time Diane had worked a double shift to pay rent, Ashley had been using Diane's money to make mortgage payments on a house Diane could never afford. I want to confront them, Diane said. Absolutely not. We use this evidence strategically. First, we file criminal charges. Then we amend the countersuit. Then we let them know what we have and watch them panic. What about the original lawsuit against me? With this evidence, their case falls apart completely. No jury will side with parents who stole their daughter's inheritance, then sued her for not giving them more money. Patricia started making phone calls. First to the district attorney's office to report the fraud, then to the probate court to challenge the estate distribution, finally to the Morrison family attorney to schedule a settlement conference. Settlement conference. Diane asked, "We're going to give them one chance to make this right before we destroy them in court. They drop their lawsuit, return your inheritance with interest, and pay your legal fees. In exchange, we don't press criminal charges. And if they refuse, then we go to war. And with this evidence, we can't lose." The call to the Morrison attorney was scheduled for Friday afternoon. Patricia would present the evidence and give them 48 hours to respond. That night, Diane couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about all the times she'd felt guilty for not helping Ashley more. All the family dinners where she'd been made to feel selfish for wanting to save money instead of spending it on others. Her phone rang at midnight. "Ashley, Diane, we need to talk. Can you come over?" "It's midnight, Ashley. Please, it's important. I found out something about Mom and Dad that you need to know." Diane almost laughed. "I already know about the inheritance, Ashley. I know you've been spending my money for 2 years. Silence on the other end of the line. "Ashley, how did you find out?" "Does it matter? You knew it was my money and you spent it anyway." "I didn't know at first. I swear. They told me Grandma left everything to me because I needed help more." "When did you find out the truth?" Another long pause. 6 months ago. I found some papers in Dad's desk." "And you said nothing. You kept spending my money for 6 more months." "I was scared. I thought if I told you, you'd hate me forever." "I hate you now." "Diane, please, let me explain." Diane hung up and turned off her phone. She was done listening to excuses and apologies, done being the understanding sister who forgave everything. Tomorrow, Patricia would make the call that would change everything. The Morrison family was about to learn that their quiet, obedient daughter had finally found her voice. But as Diane finally drifted off to sleep, she had no idea that her parents had one final card to play. Something so desperate and shocking that it would make everything that came before look like a gentle family disagreement. The next morning would bring a revelation that would shake the very foundation of everything Diane thought she knew about her family. The conference call was scheduled for 2 p.m. on Friday. Patricia had everything prepared: the bank records, the forged documents, the emails between Ashley and their mother. She'd even brought a criminal law specialist to explain the felony charges that could be filed. At 1:45 p.m., Patricia's phone rang. It was Henderson, the Morrison family attorney. "We need to postpone the call," he said, his voice strained. "There's been a development." "What kind of development?" "My clients are at the hospital. Linda Morrison had a heart attack this morning." Patricia looked at Diane, who had gone pale. "Is she okay?" "She's stable, but in intensive care. Robert is claiming the stress of the lawsuit caused it." After hanging up, Patricia turned to Diane. "This could be a delay tactic. Fake medical emergencies are common in family lawsuits. My mother wouldn't fake a heart attack, Diane said quietly. You'd be surprised what people will do when they're facing criminal charges. But when Diane called the hospital, the nurse confirmed her mother was indeed a patient. Diane found herself in an impossible position. Visit the woman who had stolen from her and sued her, or stay away and look heartless. She chose to visit. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and fear. Diane found her father in the ICU waiting room, looking older than she'd ever seen him. When he saw her, his face crumpled. She keeps asking for you, he said. The doctors say stress triggered the heart attack. Dad, we need to talk about Grandma's money. His face went white. What money? Don't lie to me anymore. I know about the inheritance. I know you've been giving it all to Ashley. Robert Morrison seemed to shrink in his chair. How did you find out? That doesn't matter. What matters is that you stole from me for 2 years, then sued me for not giving you more money. We were trying to protect you, he said weakly. By stealing from me? By making sure Ashley didn't lose everything. You're strong, Diane. You always have been. Ashley needs more help. With my money. Robert was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. There's something else you need to know. About Ashley. What about her? She's not your full sister. The words hit Diane like a physical blow. What? Your mother had an affair 15 years ago. Ashley isn't my biological daughter. Diane stared at her father, trying to process what she'd just heard. That's impossible. I found out when Ashley was 12. DNA test confirmed it. But your mother begged me to stay, to treat Ashley like my own daughter. So you've been overcompensating ever since. We felt guilty. Ashley didn't ask to be born from an affair. We wanted to make sure she felt loved and secure. What about me? What about making sure I felt loved and secure? Robert's eyes filled with tears. You were always so independent, so capable. We thought you didn't need as much attention. I needed my parents to treat me fairly. I needed my inheritance that you stole. We never meant for it to go this far. When you refused to help with the mortgage, your mother panicked. She thought you were abandoning the family. So she decided to sue me instead of telling me the truth about the inheritance. She was ashamed. We both were. The lawsuit was supposed to scare you into helping Ashley without us having to admit what we'd done. Diane stood up, her legs shaking. Where's Ashley now? She's in there with your mother. Room 314. Diane walked down the hallway in a daze. Everything made sense now. The years of favoritism, the constant pressure to help Ashley, the way her parents had treated her like an obligation while treating Ashley like a treasure. She found Ashley sitting beside their mother's bed, holding her hand. Linda Morrison was awake, but looked fragile, connected to all the machines. Diane, her mother whispered, I'm so sorry. Dad told me about the affair, Diane said quietly. Ashley's head snapped up. What affair? Linda closed her eyes. Ashley, honey, there's something we should have told you years ago. What are you talking about? Your biological father isn't Robert. I had an affair with a man named David Chin. He was my co-worker at the insurance company. Ashley's face went through a series of emotions, confusion, shock, then understanding. That's why you always treated me differently. You felt guilty. We wanted to make up for the circumstances of your birth, Linda said. By stealing from Diane? We thought we were protecting both of you. Diane was so strong and capable. You seemed to need more support. I needed honesty, Diane said. I needed parents who didn't lie to me for 15 years. And I needed parents who loved me for who I was, not because they felt guilty about how I was conceived, Ashley added. Linda started crying. We made such a mess of everything. The lawsuit, the money, the lies. Yes, you did, Diane said. And now you're going to fix it. Over the next hour, With their mother lying weak in the hospital bed, the Morrison family finally told the truth. Robert admitted he'd been taking money from the inheritance account for 2 years. Linda confessed she'd forged Diane's signature on documents that made Ashley the sole beneficiary. Ashley revealed that she'd known about the inheritance for months, but had been too afraid to say anything. She'd been living in a house paid for with money that wasn't hers while her sister worked overtime to pay rent. "I'll give you the house," Ashley said suddenly. "It should be yours anyway. It was bought with your money." "I don't want your house," Diane replied. "I want my inheritance back with interest. I want an apology, and I want you all to get therapy because this family is broken." "What about the lawsuit?" Robert asked. "We're dropping it," Linda said from the hospital bed. "All of it. We'll pay Diane's legal fees and return every penny we took." "With interest," Diane added. "With interest," Linda agreed. Patricia arrived at the hospital an hour later with settlement papers. The Morrison family would pay Diane $127,000, her original inheritance, plus interest and legal fees. They would also publicly apologize and attend family therapy. In exchange, Diane would not press criminal charges. "Are you sure about not pressing charges?" Patricia asked privately. "I'm sure. They're my family, broken and dysfunctional, but still my family." 6 months later, Diane sat in her new apartment, a spacious 2-bedroom place she'd bought with her inheritance money. Ashley had sold the house and moved into a modest apartment, getting a steady job and learning to live within her means. Their parents had kept their word about therapy. The family still had a long way to go, but they were talking honestly for the first time in years. The best part was that Diane had learned something valuable. Saying no to family didn't make her selfish. It made her strong. And sometimes the people who love you most are the ones who need to hear no the most. She kept a framed photo on her desk, not of her family, but of her grandmother Rose, who had wanted her to have a better life. Thanks to her inheritance, Diane finally did. The Morrison family revenge story had ended not with destruction, but with truth. And sometimes, Diane thought, the truth was the sweetest revenge of all. But the real victory wasn't the money or the new apartment. It was the knowledge that she'd finally found her voice and wasn't afraid to use it. The quiet, obedient daughter was gone forever, replaced by a woman who knew her worth and wouldn't let anyone, even family, treat her as less than she deserved. The lawsuit papers were filed away in a box in her closet, a reminder of how far she'd come and how much she'd learned about the true meaning of family loyalty. Real family doesn't ask you to sacrifice everything for their mistakes. Real family lifts you up instead of tearing you down. And as Diane looked out the window of her new home, she realized that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and refusing to let anyone make you small ever again.